On the day my son left me at the Maple Grove Senior Residence, he did not even bother to turn off the engine. I remember the sound of that car idling in the parking lot, like it was too impatient to stay and too ashamed to leave. I sat in the front seat, with my small suitcase in my lap, staring at the brick building in front of me. Clean windows, trimmed hedges, soft music drifting through the open front doors. It looked peaceful from the outside. It looked like a place people went to disappear. "Mom," Caleb said, not looking at me, "this is the best thing for now." I turned slowly toward him. Best for who? His jaw tightened. That was always the first sign he was about to lie. "For everybody. You need help during the day, and Brianna and I are overwhelmed." Overwhelmed. That was the word he used after I raised him alone, after I worked double shifts at a diner, after I scrubbed off his floors until my hands cracked open in winter, after I gave up my wedding ring just to keep the lights on and his school lunches paid for. Overwhelmed. I looked at my son's hands on the steering wheel. I had held those hands when he was sick with fever, when he learned to ride a bike, when he cried because some boy called him poor, when he got his first job, when he graduated college. I had held them through every chapter of his life. Now those same hands were leaving me at a care home. "You said I was moving in with you," I whispered. He finally looked at me. His face was hard, in a way I did not recognize. "That was before. Things changed." "What things?" He exhaled like I was being difficult on purpose. "The house is sold, Mom. The money's already being used to pay off some debts. Brianna and I need to get stable. We can't keep carrying everything." I felt the air leave my chest. "The house is sold?" He nodded once. It was the house I had bought with Arthur, after 23 years of scraping and saving. The house where I buried my husband. The house where I raised Caleb after the funeral, where I painted the bedroom blue because he said it made him feel safe, where I sat at the kitchen table every night, making sure he had more opportunities than I ever did. And he had sold it. I must have gone pale because Caleb's voice softened, but only enough to sound rehearsed. "You'll like it here. They have activities, meals, people your age. I am not your luggage," I said. He flinched, but only for a second. "I'm not doing this to hurt you." I stared at him. "Then what are you doing?" He opened his mouth, closed it again, and then said the sentence that split my life clean in two. "I'm doing what I have to do." Then he got out of the car, came around, and walked me to the front desk as if he were dropping off a package. He handed the nurse my suitcase. He kissed my forehead, without meeting my eyes. And before I could say another word, he was gone. I stood there in the lobby with my purse gripped so tightly my fingers ached, watching his car disappear through the glass doors. That was the moment I understood something horrible. My son had not brought me here because he loved me. He had brought me here because I was in his way. The first week at Maple Grove, I barely spoke to anyone. I spent most of my time in the corner of the common room, staring out the window at the parking lot, waiting for Caleb to come back and say there had been some terrible mistake. He never came. He called twice. The first time, he sounded rushed. The second time, irritated. "How are things?" "Fine," I said, because pride is a funny thing. It will let your heart break before it lets your voice shake. He muttered something about work, about Brianna, about the accountant, about bills. Then he said, "We'll visit when things settle down." Things never settled down. A month passed, then 2, then 3. I learned the names of the people in my hallway. Mrs. Alvarez in 214, who remembered every song from the 1960s and swore she had once danced with a man who looked just like Elvis. Mr. Bennett in 219, who used to fix motorcycles and still smelled faintly of grease no matter how many times they washed his shirts. And in 211 lived a quiet woman named June who watched everyone like she was always waiting for the next betrayal. June was the first person who asked me why I looked like I had swallowed a knife. I almost lied, but something in her face stopped me. So I told her, not everything, just enough. "My son brought me here," I said. He said it was temporary. June nodded like she had heard that story before. Mine said that too. That night I cried into my pillow until the fabric was damp and my ribs hurt. The next morning, I found a voicemail on my phone from an unknown number. A man's voice. Calm. Measured. "Mrs. Reed? This is Daniel Mercer, your husband's former attorney. I've been trying to reach you. There are some documents related to Arthur's estate that you need to see." My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Arthur had died 9 years earlier. I had not heard his attorney's name in years. Why would he be calling now? I called the number back from the hallway payphone, and after a few rings, a man answered. "Mrs. Reed?" "Yes." "What documents?" There was a pause. "Could you come to my office tomorrow?" I looked around the corridor, at the beige walls and the framed pictures of cheerful flowers, and I said the first honest thing I had said in months. "I have nowhere else to go." The silence on the line changed. "Then I'll come to you." He arrived the next afternoon in a gray suit with a briefcase in one hand and a face that told me this was not a casual visit. He was polite, but serious. He asked me to sit down, then placed a thick folder on the table. "Mrs. Reed," he said gently, "your husband left instructions for you years ago. I'm ashamed to say I should have made harder efforts to contact you sooner." I frowned. "What instructions?" He opened the folder and slid out a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in Arthur's familiar slanted handwriting. I touched the paper and nearly lost my breath. "Arthur?" Daniel nodded. "He retained certain protections for you. In the event of coercion, illness, or financial manipulation, he wanted you to have a way to reclaim your assets without relying on anyone else." My pulse thudded in my ears. "What are you saying?" "That your house was never legally supposed to be sold." I stared at him. "That's impossible." Caleb said, "I'm saying the deed was transferred under suspicious circumstances. The notary listed on the paperwork no longer works in the county. The signature appears altered. And there's more." He took a careful breath. "Your son attempted to place a reverse mortgage on the property 3 weeks before the sale." I felt the room tilt. "A reverse mortgage?" "Yes. The application was denied. But someone then produced transfer documents that moved the title out of your name entirely. We believe those documents were forged." I sat very still. So still, in fact, that Daniel lowered his voice. "Mrs. Reed, I need to ask you something. Did you sign anything recently that you did not fully understand?" A memory flashed in my head. Caleb standing at my kitchen table 2 months earlier, talking fast about routine paperwork and benefits updates, sliding page after page in front of me while Brianna watched from the doorway with her tight little smile. I had been tired that day. I had signed where he pointed. My own son had tricked me. I covered my mouth with one hand, but the sound that came out of me was still a sob. Daniel did not interrupt. He waited until I could breathe again. Then he said, "There's one more thing. Arthur set aside a separate account in your name. He left it with instructions to be activated only if something happened to the house. It was meant as protection. The funds are substantial." I stared at him. "How substantial?" He named a number so large I thought he had made a mistake. All those years Arthur had been quieter than me, steadier than me. But he had known. He had known our son could one day become a stranger. And he had built a lifeline for me with the kind of love that does not need applause. That night, I sat on my bed at Maple Grove and opened Arthur's envelope with hands that would not stop trembling. Inside was a letter in his handwriting. "My dearest Ellie," it began, and just seeing that nickname made my throat close up. "If you are reading this, then something has gone wrong. I never believed Caleb was heartless, only restless. But restlessness can become greed if no one stops it. Do not let anyone make you feel small in your own home. I built this for you, too. Use what I left. And remember this: loving someone does not mean letting them erase you." I pressed the paper to my chest and cried until my eyes burned. The next morning, I did something I had not done in years. I got angry. Not the helpless kind. Not the soft kind. The kind that straightens your spine and wakes up your bones. I told Daniel to do whatever he needed to do. I gave him dates, names, memories, details. I described the conversation at my kitchen table, the papers Caleb rushed me through, Brianna's fake sweetness, the phone calls that stopped when he got what he wanted. Daniel investigated quickly, too quickly for Caleb to notice. 2 weeks later, I received a call from a detective. By then, I had stopped crying every day. I was volunteering in the dining room, helping Mrs. Alvarez organize bingo nights, reading to Mr. Han, Bennett when his eyesight failed him, and sitting with June during her bad evenings. Maple Grove was no longer a prison. It was becoming a place where forgotten people reminded each other that they still mattered. Then Daniel came back, this time with a detective beside him. "We have enough to challenge the sale," Daniel said, "and enough to prove fraud in the transfer. Your son and daughter-in-law used your signature on multiple documents without full disclosure. They also directed funds from the house sale into a business account tied to Brianna's brother." The detective opened a folder and showed me copies of bank records, emails, and scanned pages. My name was on papers I had never knowingly approved. Caleb had not only stolen the house, he had used my own identity to do it. I felt sick. But beneath the sickness was something colder. Clarity. I asked the detective, "What happens now?" He looked at Daniel, then back at me. "You decide how far you want to take this." I thought about that for a long time. I thought about Caleb as a boy with scraped knees, about the first time he called me Mom, about the little blue backpack I bought when we could barely afford groceries. I thought about the man he had become, standing in my driveway with tired eyes and a greedy mouth, telling me I was too much work. And I remembered Arthur's letter. "Do not let anyone make you feel small." So I said, "Take it all the way." The call I made to Caleb that night was the first one he answered in months. "Mom?" he said, sounding surprised. "What's wrong?" I let that hang in the air for a second. "Nothing is wrong," I said. "Not for me." "Are you okay?" Brianna said the home called about. "I'm in touch with your father's attorney." Silence. Then he laughed once, but it was thin and nervous. "Why would you do that?" "Because I know what you did." "Mom, I don't know what you mean." I closed my eyes. "You sold my house with forged papers." The silence on the line was so complete I could hear my own breathing. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. "That's not what happened." "Then explain it." "We were drowning," he snapped. "You don't understand what it takes to keep a family going. Brianna and I had debts. You wouldn't have helped." The truth of that sentence hit me harder than I expected. "You didn't ask," I said. "We shouldn't have had to beg." I nearly smiled then, not because it was funny, but because I realized how far he had drifted from the boy I once knew. "No," I said. "You thought taking was easier. You're making this into something it's not." "No, Caleb. You made it into something it was never supposed to be." His breathing became rough. "What did you do?" I looked around the little room that had become mine. At the framed drawing from one of the residents. At the blanket June had knitted for me. At the life I had begun to build from the ashes of what he tried to destroy. "I chose myself," I said. Then I hung up. The legal process moved faster after that. There was a hearing, then another. The county clerk's office confirmed the notary stamp had been copied. The signature expert said the pen pressure was inconsistent with my age and hand condition. The title transfer was voided. The sale was reversed. The bank froze the money. Brianna's brother was questioned. Caleb's business accounts were opened. Every lie they built started collapsing under the weight of the next one. People who had once smiled at them stopped answering calls. The neighbors who thought Caleb was such a devoted son heard the real story from the same small-town mouths that had praised him. The same community that had once admired his polished shoes and rehearsed gratitude now looked at him with the kind of disgust that sticks. Then came the part I did not expect. Caleb came to see me. He did not call first. He did not send a message. He just walked into Maple Grove one rainy afternoon, soaked through, with no Brianna beside him and no confidence left in his face. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not younger. Just hollowed out. I was sitting in the courtyard under the awning with June, listening to the rain. When I saw him, I stood slowly. June glanced between us and quietly walked away. "Mom," he said. For a second, I saw the little boy again, the one with muddy shoes and a chipped front tooth. Then he opened his mouth, and the old spell broke. "I'm sorry." I said nothing. He stepped closer. I messed everything up. That's one way to say it. His eyes filled, but I did not trust tears anymore. Brianna left. I almost laughed. Of course she had. When the money stopped, so did the love. I had seen that kind of marriage before. It only lasted as long as the rent did. He swallowed hard. The business is gone. The bank took everything. I waited. He looked at me like a man standing on the edge of a cliff.
I didn't think you'd actually go after us.
I heard the raw truth in that line. He had not believed I would fight back because he had mistaken my silence for weakness. I raised you, I said, my voice quiet but steady. I fed you, clothed you, worked until my back gave out, and loved you when I had nothing left to give. You thought that meant I would let you bury me alive and call it help? His face twisted. I was desperate. So was I said. For years. The difference is, I never stole from you to survive. That landed hard. He bowed his head. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped the railing. Somewhere inside, someone laughed at a game show. Finally, he said, I don't know how to fix this. I studied him. My son was a stranger now in many ways, but not completely. I could still see the frightened child under the damage. That did not excuse him. It only explained how a bad choice becomes a life if no one stops it. You can't fix it by asking me to erase it, I said. You can only live with it. He nodded once, tears spilling now for real. I'm sorry, he said again. But this time it sounded less like a plea and more like a sentence he would have to repeat to himself for years. I told him the truth that mothers sometimes have to learn too late. I forgive you enough not to poison my own heart, I said. But forgiveness is not the same as trust. And trust is something you burned. He lowered his eyes. Then I told him what came next. You will pay restitution. You will take responsibility. And you will not come near me again, unless it is with honesty and time. He tried to speak, but I raised a hand. I loved the son I raised, I said. I have no idea who you became. He left without arguing. The consequences did not vanish after that. They never do. Caleb lost his standing. He lost the money. He lost the house he wanted to build on my bones. He lost the easy story he told other people about being a devoted son. And because the law had evidence, he also lost the protection of pretending it had all been a misunderstanding. The world finally saw what he had done. As for Brianna, she tried to shift the blame, then tried to play innocent, then tried to disappear behind excuses. None of it worked. Once a person has built their life on other people's losses, the truth has a way of catching up. I stayed at Maple Grove, but not because I had to. I stayed because I chose to. Daniel helped me reclaim my money and set up the trust Arthur had wanted me to have all along. I used part of it to improve the residence. New books, better chairs, a garden in the courtyard, a small scholarship fund for the staff's children, because I knew what it meant to live one bill away from falling apart. People began calling me Miss Reed, then Mrs. Reed, then Ellie when they knew me better, not as a woman abandoned, but as a woman who had survived. Months later, Caleb wrote me a letter, not a call, a letter. He said he had started counseling. He said he was working a job he used to think was beneath him. He said he was learning finally that being somebody's son had been a gift, not a guarantee. He did not ask for money. He did not ask to come home. He only said he understood now what he had lost. I folded the letter and placed it in Arthur's old envelope. Maybe one day I will read it again. Maybe one day I will answer. Maybe not. What matters is that I no longer sit by a window waiting for the person who chose greed over love. I no longer measure my worth by the apology of a man who arrived too late. The real inheritance Arthur left me was not the account, though that saved me. It was not the house, though it was mine again. It was not even the letter, though I keep it close. It was the reminder that my life belonged to me. And Caleb, the son I spent my life raising, learned the hardest lesson of all. You can abandon a mother and still be haunted by her strength. You can betray a woman who built your world and still end up living inside the consequences. That is what people call karma, where I come from. And on the day I stood in the courtyard of Maple Grove, with the rain falling soft around me and my own name finally meaning something again, I realized fate had not forgotten me at all. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to give me back my life.